Agora, cantonês ou... Muito boa tarde. Thank you for being here. I will carry out in English from now on. I'll just have a few words before I go into the theme that brings me here. To my first traditional word is for Ana Silvério Marques. She was the person who introduced me to this foundation. She brought me here. She introduced me to Felipe. Then I knew Dr. Rui Cunha and then Rui Pedro Cunha. Very happy to be here. This is a great institution in Macau. It connects the cultures and the knowledge in the West and the East. So it's a great privilege and a big honor that you received me here. So I'm very happy to have so many friends around and people that I really admire. From China, from Macau, from Portugal and elsewhere. Let me say that this past summer, while on holidays, I get a contact from Belgium. I understand it's from Brussels. And I knew that, well, if it's summer in Portugal, it will be summer also, or even deeper summer over there. I understood they were quite anxious regarding the role of big tech in Europe as the situation regarding high-tech industries was developing. And in fact, they asked me to lead a team to coordinate a study on the futures of big tech in the horizon of 2040. They also said they had a very tight finish line for the project. So this was in late August. They wanted the first draft by November. So this was quite tough. What happened was that I had the time. I had left the Portuguese regulator for communications just a short while ago. That meant that I was on leave. I had other plans, but this became the key project for some time. Eventually, in November, the main draft was done, not revised, not edited, not formatted. The charts, the graphs were still not finished, but they were in a hurry to get my authorization to send it to Mario Draghi, the former president of the European Central Bank and one of the past ministers of Italy, non-elected, by the way. And what happened was that they were able to commission this study. It was for DG Research, sort of Ministry of Science and Technology, with DG Connect just behind. But the main customer was DG Research. They were actually trying to push this agenda as the European Commission also had asked for 2 reports that were to be published this very year, 2024. So one of the other reports was about the future of the internal market, the single market in Europe, that was commissioned to Enrico Letta, a former prime minister also of Italy, unelected as well, a technocrat, and by that time, and still today, president of the Jacques Delors Institution or Foundation, something like that. And that is out already. A couple of weeks ago it was published. And the report for EU future, not the internal market, but in the world market, so about competitiveness, is due in 1 or 2 weeks. So this is having all the indications of a sort of policy shift in Brussels. And I became convinced that they were quite worried about how this particular report could come out, yes. Because they have also other projects on the future of social controversies and social movements, the future of food. They had other things going on, but they were particularly interested in this. So what I'll do is just to introduce my sort of topic timeline. I will just try to explain what the project was all about, then put forward the major observations we did, and to give a word or two regarding the method, because I think it's relevant, and the key findings, and then some policy implications. On the right-hand side, you can see my colleagues, Anna from the University of Utrecht, Daniele from Birkbeck, and Lena from the University of Athens. I could not choose the team, and I did not know them, and they are all my seniors. In the end, it turned out to be, I think, a successful project. The way we interpreted the research challenge was like this. How is the EU going to be able to accommodate or manage its own destiny in a world that is now shaped by those giant digital platforms with which we have a contact in places like this from the morning until the night, yeah, in many ways. So we are talking about the largest 5 US companies by stock valuation. And they have been in the radar screen for some time. In the early days of the internet this century, the conversation was basically one with positive overtones. So the internet was a level playing field, everything was possible, the storyline was about disintermediation, the possibilities were there, globalization was now also technology driven, but around the year 2010, the facts of internet became to be seen in a different light. And in a few years, the conversation, and these examples of books are to let you know that the conversation became a little bit more negative in terms of connotation. So you have Goliath, traps, merchants, and whole of tyranny, big giant barons, and the thing was that around the year 2010, it was now clear that the cloud as an infrastructure has changed the way the internet is governed. Digital access is through this new business model called platforms. These platforms tend to polarize the markets in which they are, and they tend also to spread to contiguous markets. So these are sort of conglomerates that not only have economies of scale, they have economies of scope. So they have significant intermediation power. Many reports started to be written in the late 2010s, so around 2017, 18, 19, you have a wave of reports, many of them commissioned by antitrust, competition policy authorities in the US, in Australia, in Europe, even by the Commission itself. And they are now putting the light into the damage these companies can bring to welfare of consumers, for instance, in terms of privacy. But also there are some concerns regarding strict competition policy, so abuse of monopoly power, and also some discussions related to technology sovereignty, which became a keyword in Europe. The covers of The Economist are also giving us some notion that things were shaping up in a different direction. So you see that around the year 2017, a famous cover by The Economist tells us that data is the new oil, but then you have things regarding to the American giants becoming new titans. You have a classic scare covers from The Economist that point the finger to China, very classic Economist types of cover, pointing the finger to Chinese developments. And yeah, we can measure actually by analyzing the covers the sentiment in the public sphere of decision makers, since this is actually a magazine very much consumed by decision makers. So this is the landscape. The issue now with the Commission has to do with the fact that we now really rely very much on the services provided by big tech. They also have the infrastructure themselves. So for instance, they lay down the submarine cable network that allows for the traffic of above 90% of the world's internet traffic. This is important not only for consumers, we have talked about privacy, but they are also important for companies, so industrial users of their services, since, for instance, in electronic marketplaces, they stand in the middle of the demand side, consumers wanting to buy online, but also companies wanting to sell online. They do not sell much if they just advertise in their own website. They go through the platform, but when they go through the platform, they release data regarding the product characteristics, but the digital platform knows much more about how consumers are reacting to the product than themselves. So they have the first-hand data, and this is big data regarding users and consumers. These digital platforms are like gated spaces, so they own these spaces and they actually regulate the spaces. So if a user comes to me, and this is a fact, saying that, oh, I just saw an image in Instagram owned by Meta, the owner of Facebook, and I saw an image and I put hashtag pro-Palestine, I was put on notice immediately by Instagram saying that they are going to review my profile because this content may be, damaging for some rights. So they actually regulate the space, and they are not transparent. We don't know why they are doing it and why they are doing it for. So many of us have a stake as users, policymakers, regulators, and innovators. So the questions are the following: shall we allow them to carry on? Shall we try to harness their power and to steer according to national or international goals, societal goals? Do we have a chance as for actually tightly regulating them? Or can we just go with the flow and try to be minimalist in the way we use and interplay with these ecosystems? So we want to know what will be the development as we go forward, since the past is already quite clear of what happened, and the parameters of the study became more or less framed by these concerns to the horizon of 2040 from an innovation point of view, since the client was mostly the corner of the European Commission that deals with innovation and research programs. Yeah, of course, we are going to check that, in fact, we did not know enough about them. They have a massive footprint in search, in social networks, social media. They have also a huge footprint in the online advertisement market. They also have in cloud services, a number of streaming, a number of markets and person-to-person communications, but we did not know enough about their role in R&D. So this was the first fact we established, and I think this was shocking enough to grab their attention. So we were able to understand that these entities are heavy research and development spenders. If we take just 1 year of their R&D investment, this is more than all the EU R&D budget, and we're talking about 27 countries. So this is bigger. The top 5 together are larger than the 27 countries pooling the money for research and development at the EU level, but not for 1 year. They are more than the framework program, which runs for 7 years. One example. One company, Amazon, and this is data from their books, from their accounts books. One company, Amazon, has R&D budget which is above the federal R&D budget of Germany. Germany is the largest R&D actor in Europe. So this is the kind of stuff we are talking about. These companies have a standing that is comparable with all countries or supranational entities like the EU. All right, so in terms of patents, if we go to data from the European Patent Office, they really are big. In terms of market cap, there are a few countries above $1 trillion. It's the top 5, Saudi Aramco, and now NVIDIA for semiconductors. In terms of lobbying activities in Brussels, they have surpassed the former big player, which was big oil. So they are now the heaviest spenders in, one could say, social engineering in Brussels. Yeah. And yeah, the five big companies, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. I'm missing Amazon. Did I miss Meta? This will be my focus. I mean, in the sense that they are the synthesis, and they have their headquarters, all of them, outside the EU. So now you understand why the people in the Commission were worried. Only a few other companies worldwide can compare in terms of high-tech activities, and these are Chinese, Tencent, Baidu, Huawei, and now Alibaba, and now Temu, the marketplace. But yeah, the West is basically dominated by those American giants. This is a chart. If you go through all the corpus of Google Scholar scanning of books, and they have scanned thousands and thousands, millions actually, of books, this is the frequency of appearance of the sequence of characters big tech. Yeah, so it became actually a label for this type of companies. So just a chart. I can't. If you know the Google Ngrams, they don't provide you with y-axis. It's a proportion of the total. Usually, they are not. They are a proportion of 100% of all books scanned. But the idea is just to give you the hockey stick shape at the very end, and when basically they take over the internet as we know it. Just to say that by the early 2010, so 2010, 12 to 2014, the top R&D spenders in the world were not this type of companies. Usually we could see pharma companies or VW, for instance, in the top. And these companies have been basically displaced by the Facebooks, the Apples, also other companies. Alphabet is there. Yeah. So just to say to you that in 10 years things really changed. This is the performance of companies against countries in Europe, and there you go. All of the five are above R&D spending of the second largest R&D spender in Europe, which is France. Now, what did we do? So we knew that the Commission wanted a foresight project, so about the future. It was not about econometrics. It was a sort of strategic study on the pathways ahead. Scenario methodology was the technical approach we used, and we were able to consolidate the core team, so 5 authors. We carried out 2 scenario workshops, so with experts discussing scenarios. We had 4 scenarios. First, we needed to establish the main scenarios, and for that we needed to come out with 2 critical uncertainties. This is the tricky job. We have to come out with 2 critical orthogonal uncertainties, because once you establish those, the 4 scenarios will pop up. Then we have to label them, give a name, and fill the alternative world, 4 of them, with the actual content, so that we can live it. Yeah. So the scenario workshops were actually to, tease out the key characteristics of each scenario. We had people from many countries, On the top left, for instance, that's Keith Smith is a New Zealander. There is also a Chinese scholar is not there. You have an American professor from California, a Spanish lady working in the UK. Just to give you examples, we had, in the end of the day, more than 50 experts. You cannot get the attention of these experts and their time for free easily. So we needed to buy by advancing some credit. We needed them to trust us. It's not easy. So we had one policy workshop. So another loop. Once we had the scenarios, then we had to derive policy implications. Then we had to wind tunnel the policy implications with another batch of experts. That was a policy workshop. We released the draft in a sort of soft release to people that the commission decided to let into a sort of Zoom call. So this was a formal presentation with people we didn't know, just to expose our work to cold opinions. And still, in the end, we stress tested the policy implications with actual experts on foresight. So just scenario experts and people that know about strategic planning, futures. It's just to get out of these several loops of work with belts and suspenders, right? So sort of trying to bulletproof the work. This is just a word on the critical uncertainties. We had two. So the first one was an axis of techno-economic profiles. Basically, if the technology and mode of organization will hyperscale, we use some wordage that is new, hyperscale or smaller scale. So if it's smaller scale, small is beautiful. If this is an hyperscaler world, economies of scale are massive. Economies of scale and scope are really the determinants of organization. Here, and the other critical uncertainty was about the logic of global governance. So will the world chessboard splinter, and we have fragmentation, and this is post-globalization post-globalization is about fragmentation. So we have these sort of enclosures, or it's sort of still an open type of world that is more familiar to us, relatively open. If we cross the two axes, we come up with the four scenarios, and the names that we were able to come up with was, so for scenario one, winners take all. So this is something I will just develop in a minute. It's a sort of open world with hyperscaler dynamics. This is a sort of more closed world, but with hyperscaler dynamics. We call it Pax Technologica. Scenario two. Scenario three is about, yes, there will be no globalization as we knew it before, but there is some sort of a small is beautiful dynamics over here, rematching, scenario three. Finally, scenario four, closet liberalism, where we have smaller scales operations, but a sort of competitive market. We used sort of whiteboard methods to get all the issues, all the aspects to be explored by the experts. We had to do it all online. And then we had to really, give some texture to the scenarios. Here we have the scenarios again. Scenario 1, 2, 3, and 4. So scenario 1, winner takes all. So this is a world that is dominated by big tech. No chance. They are there. There is still a pro-globalist agreement between countries. So it's a wide field with small fences. This, of course, is just the key theme, but the major theme does not preclude, for instance, that we have some sort of policy opportunities to tinker at the edges of the system. So, for instance, trying to nudge softly the companies in the direction of, sustainability, social governance standards. You see, it's a Davos world, isn't it? They look at themselves in the mirror of their meetings, and they are able to, withstand what they see. Sugarcoating of, a competitiveness-driven world, dominated by the big players of the informational age. Scenario 2 is a sort of compromise. Now we will try to rein them in. It's still a sort of globalist game, but now there are big spheres of influence. I don't know. East and West, I don't know. Global North, global South, I don't know. Inside these arenas, you have a sort of business as usual, but outside you have friction, right? So scenario 1, the previous one, was familiar to those of us paying attention until 2016. Yeah? 2017, pre-Trump era. This is very familiar for us in the post-COVID era. So we know that technology sovereignty is word of mouth in Brussels. We know that the US and Europe are cooperating as like-minded policy makers. They talk about secure supply chains. They think that we can set up some rules of the game finally to manage the extreme ability of big tech to set up their own rules. Now we will also do some rules ourselves. In Europe, this is about, DSA, Digital Services Act. It's about the DMA, Digital Markets Act. It's about the Artificial Intelligence Act, the AI Act. It's about the Data Act. It's about the Digital Governance Act. It's about the European Media Freedom Act. They are acting a lot in Europe, aren't they? They sometimes see themselves as the lighthouse of the world regarding the template of what to do with these new technologies. It's the so-called Brussels effect. They like to call it like that. What I say is that if the previous one was the Washington consensus, very familiar, this I call the Brussels consensus. Rematching. oh, so this is a world in which, yeah, globalization is renegotiated. Yeah, now, free trade is not like before. There is some action at the small scale level of operations. You know that in the old days we had big steel, big oil, big tobacco, and they did not rule forever. Things evolve, tides change. So maybe now we are, of course, in this smaller scale level, and this rematching is about a more pluralist international scene, a multipolar world, some contesting geographies that also want to have their own fair share in the world game. Maybe this is a world in which Europe gets their act together and they say, hey, Airbus worked. This was possible to pull together factors of production and really make a new global player emerge, in the high-tech, airframe building industry. Maybe we can do it again. Maybe this is a world in which the Europeans turn their back to plain vanilla neoliberalism and they set up new European state-owned enterprises? Maybe. So this is a world definitely with industrial policy, competition policy in the sense of antitrust and regulation is seen as not being enough. And in fact, in this world, Europe is more on a par with the rest of the world. Is seeing emerging powers like Brazil, like India, like China, as Russia, as a more like peers, and not lecturing them all the time about their so-called values, while everybody else looks at the television, maybe not their own TV stations, maybe their own TV stations, and they see hypocrisy for what it's worth. Now this is a sort of more humble, more flexible, more active Europe. Finally, closet liberalism. This is a scenario in which you have international competitiveness, but the ball is with smaller firms, so maybe the services of the big tech become commodities. They are not enough for differentiating. Many small companies and smaller ecosystem are able to be born and grow. The fight is between European countries. They say they pay attention to the World Trade Organization, but they do it more in sin than in virtue. Yeah, but they pay lip service to those rules. European Union has at least one sort of basic approach, which is to make Europe a sort of continental sandbox. Take down bureaucratic burdens, get the state out of the way. So this is really the fruit flies of capitalism becoming the true nature of this world. All right. If we want to give from this scenario a story, a menu for stakeholders, we can. For instance, this is just an example of the menu we can give to regulators. So this is, important for me just because of my, 1 year ago when I was at the foundation, I was still a member of the board of the Portuguese regulator. So for me, this is quite familiar. This is what hat the regulator should have in each of these scenarios. I could do this for other stakeholders. Yes. So this is just to say that this setup is flexible for a number of interested parties. We can compare the scenarios and see that the emotions, last line, are really different. We can present the European Commission with major strategic outlooks, and we have many policy lessons that we put in the report. The report, in the end of the day, was much larger than they expected. The executive summary is quite small, but they have an arsenal. After that tip of the iceberg, they have a big inventory of work, methodology, descriptions, and strategic outlines. We did general implications, the strategies that are robust across scenarios. For instance, there is no way to escape that it's not neutral to have or not your own leading actors. Otherwise, the US will not curate so much about how their big players are treated outside, and they do pay a great deal of attention. I know this for a fact. You should, another bullet number 2, you should benchmark as a country, as a EU, you should benchmark yourself not only against other countries or geographies, you should benchmark yourself against companies. That's new, I think. At least a new perspective for us. And for each scenario, we actually came out with a number of specific scenario-oriented implications. For instance, the last one, scenario 4, this is a place for setting up hotspots of innovation, localized and endogenous innovation is critical for scenario 4. So this could be a policy implication, to facilitate the emergence of agglomerations of capabilities. Yeah, so that's the cover of the report. The major thing is that tech ultra bigness is here to stay, but always in a state of transition. Definitely, platformization was the techno-economic trajectory in the second decade of this century, but intelligentification seems to be what is going on. If we look at the data, patent data, if we look at the deals, mergers and acquisitions, seems to be AI-driven. It's a top-up layer over a big infrastructure they have, including big data. Yeah. So what is in a broad brush? What is going on in the US? In the US, economics rules. Let the market be. Minimal safeguards. In China, politics rules. They cannot become out of control. They still have to be in line with the interests of the people. In the EU, it seems that they are quite happy sometimes in having regulatory artifacts that are champions, regulatory champions. Yeah, so to influence what is going to happen, it's not easy, but we try to provide at least a number of pieces of the puzzle that the decision makers can recombine in a way that it will be fitting to the challenges as they perceive them. Thank you. I think we are open to questions. Is that it? I think so, right? Yes. Q&A? Yeah. So we have a microphone over there.
Hello. Thank you, Professor Sandro Mendoza. It was a very interesting talk. I think it's a matter of the day. We have to, I mean, in Europe, to readdress our position in the world, in a world that is changing. I think it makes all sense talking about this. Now, you talked about the importance of big tech and data centers. Now, data centers are probably the new main energy consumers in Europe, and we cannot talk about data centers without talking about energy. Is it certain that data processing, which can be used for cloud storage of videos of kittens on Instagram or people dancing on TikTok, can have more economic value than the cost of energy that will be used? So this is just one question. If you allow me a second one. Now, the big players here, of course, are the US and China. And US is a source of energy on its own. China has access to energy because of all the logistics that has been building with this industry. Now, Europe, as we all recently know, have had access to cheap energy, but in September 2022, we lost quite a few because of Nord Stream. How can we protect Europe that a competitor, we don't know which one, I'm not going to enter in these details, can bomb another energy infrastructure that may impede this to happen?
I think I can get to your points. Maybe I just attack these 2 points and then we move on. So, yeah, the fact that information and communication technologies are great users of energy. For a long time, this passed without any alert. Finally, I mean, at least some 5 years ago, we could see that the OECD, the Association of the European Regulators for Telecom, they were already setting up working groups. If you don't know what to do with it, at least you do a working group, and at least you can claim that you are doing something. So they have a great usage of energy, for sure, and sometimes this even alters the relative advantages of countries regarding what they can bring to the digital society. For instance, the Norwegian advertise their coldness of the country as an advantage because of the cooling systems have to work on less external power, since everything is quite cold over there, right? So that's an advantage. So when the submarine cables land in Norway, they may have you know, the server park can be they're running, you know, churning data and transmissions at a lower cost. Also, for instance, in the south of Lisbon, you are aware that part of the way to requalify the industrial complex of Sines was to, you know, couple the data cluster with a green energy cluster with solar photovoltaic power, and also maybe green hydrogen. And also, I mean, you have already a legacy infrastructure over there, which is a pipeline. You know about this, Rodrigo, that would carry water from the sea to cool down the old coal power stations. So that will be a legacy infrastructure there that could also give relative advantages to that particular value proposition, all right? But this is not going into other talk. The other talk is, AI is very intensive on compute. Not talking about bitcoins. There was a controversy in I think even in Norway or in Sweden. They saw that the grid, national grid, was being sucked, basically kidnapped by these activities. Yeah, so they have a tangible impact. Regarding energy sovereignty, is that it? Yeah.
Basically, competitiveness.
Yeah. So I mean, when you said we as
We in Europe, we don't have
so you
energy sources like
Yeah.
in the American continent, or access to energy sources. Oh, sorry, we don't have.
I got it.
You got it.
Yeah, but the we in Europe is quite peculiar, isn't it? Because Portugal has two islands on the western side of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, making Portugal an American country. And Ronaldo was born in Madeira, making him an African. So what is Europe? When the impact of the inflationary wave driven from energy constraints came in Europe, the Iberian Peninsula had very competitive prices. So there is variety inside Europe. Yeah? I know there is centralization of power, of political power, now in Brussels, and this is a trend. And I've been talking about this myself in the press, which is a trend. People have to be aware of this. It's not the point here, but I know my own stance regarding that trend. But the energy is something that energy sources is something that Europe lacks. Europe as a whole lacks, and also other things, natural resources, critical minerals, And Europe in the old days used to colonize and take out resources. The countries are not willing to let Europe, run with its own style of the old days. So we have to reconfigure. Yeah. They have to figure out, and they pay very well themselves, so that we should be demanding in terms of their proposed solutions. I will do that. They are very well paid, the decision makers in the European Commission and elsewhere, so that we should push them to come up with rational propositions for the future. Yes. Up to those that are willing to take the risks of calling them to reason. Yeah? Because it's not easy these days. Next.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Sandra. My name is Insun Zhang, a University of Macau student. We are concerned about the sustainability of the technology growth globally as ASI, we call artificial superintelligence, emerges. So it's different from AI because it's supercomputer will emerge in the future and take over our rules. Okay, so it will lead to like pollution, global warming, massive censorship of social media, massive surveillance. All of these maybe a consequence of the proliferation of technology from big tech companies. So I have several questions. I hope you to pick one or two to answer.
Make it short, just
Okay.
three.
What do you think the EU
I
can
answer one.
respond? Okay. What do you think the EU can respond in the future R&D in technology? Number two, what kind of ethical rules would you envision EU to carry out in the next 5 years?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, we're going. So regarding the R&D policy, so far the Europeans have privileged a sort of horizontal design to policy, not really taking visible end into the directionality of research. They have been quite light touched in terms of where to channel the research. So one thing that could be envisioned is to do something different. To do something different, it means that you have to go more into industrial policy as we know it, yeah? But actually, I don't know how will they do this with a straight face, since every day they complain about overcapacity in China and point the finger that they are doing industrial policy. So will they do industrial policy as well? And of course, everybody does it. The US does it, Europeans do it, China does it. Yeah, so it always has been present, but never so much into the open. Yeah, but if you prioritize science and technology to breakthrough technologies, but not in this sort of budgetary European-style way, you know, just the bureaucrats being in Brussels, you know, signing checks and having the market for initiative sort itself. That will be an approach. That's quite different from what the previous Europeans have done with Airbus, for instance, or with European Space Agency, or with the program leading to the Tornado fighter bomber, or with the Eurofighter fighter bomber. These are, by the way, just the two examples I gave now are fourth generation fighters. There is no European built fifth generation fighter. Germany, 1 year ago, I think, was ordering a few dozen F-35s from the US. The same country, yes, that is supplying liquid natural gas, by the way, yes. So, yeah. So we go. Perhaps I will cling to your second question, and to say so the ethical. I mean, that's quite difficult question, isn't it? Yeah. So the thing is that the term surveillance capitalism first emerged not to characterize so-called autocratic states, but to characterize so-called democratic states. It was used to characterize the US. It was the title of a book of a Harvard professor. Yeah? So that milk is on the floor already. Yeah? So what to do now? It's already spilled, that milk. One thing that myself I was involved was in AI standards. So this is a less, pompous attitude to try to build into the technical mechanisms and practice and best practice some safeguards in connection with AI. So and this is I'm talking from the point of view of the Portuguese chapter in the International Standards of Organization Working Party on AI. So nobody talks about ISO standards regarding AI, but it's a very good work, and you have other standards organizations doing, pedestrian work in which many times the heavy hitters from the political actors are not calling, the agenda in the room. Some experts are actually able to go to consensus, and this is very, very plural tradition among engineers, among practitioners, involving policymakers as well. Very, very interesting practice that is in risk if everything is geopolitical. So I'll try to protect these institutions from political interference.
The issue is that if you would like to use that approach to do this, things will be happening in a brutal way or sometimes unexpected ways. Why should not we start to think about FATE in terms of AI? So-called F stands for fairness, A stands for authenticity, T stands for transparency, and E means explainability.
Yeah, those things like explainability are into the AI standards. The definition of fairness is quite contentious. Yeah, and transparency is about algorithmic transparency. The EU actually is already set up a center for algorithmic transparency in the Joint Research Center located in Seville. So some things, if you want to be optimistic, there are some reasons for that in terms of effort, Thank you. Great questions.
Okay. It happens. The microphone is in my hand, so I will ask a question. And in fact, I'm the doctoral student of Sandro, and Professor Sandro gave me a lot of supervision about how to do the program like police making. So in the past time, I joined in some policy making program in China. Some local government governor just think about ways to do faster. And then regarding the policy making, many policy making, yeah, many consider how to do higher, faster. But in the later time, in China, the governors will consider the empirical study, may consider case study during the policy making progress. So I want to say what you during the study with you under your supervision. I learned a lot and too much help in the policy making program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Personally.
Thank you.
And my question is about also related to the new energy vehicles. Yes. I remember that the 5 or 10 years ago, the European vehicle companies, Benz, BMW, mentioned that the new energy vehicle was the future, and at that time I can remember the electric BMW.
Yes.
Was amazing.
Yeah.
But after 5-10 years, and I showed you to the new vehicle car exhibition hall. Amazing. So many
Models.
so many good cars, and now Chinese companies, 7 Chinese new vehicle car companies ranked the top 10 of the world new vehicle car companies. But this year, or maybe at the end of last year, Benz, BMW said that the electric vehicles are not the future, and they began to they would postpone the program to develop new energy vehicles. So I'm wondering if this announcement or this policy are the official policy of the car companies, or just a kind of competition strategy. What's the attitude of
The car makers.
the European governments? Yes, that's my question.
Thank you, Julian. So, regarding the policy making style in China, one thing that is very interesting is the way it is experimentalist. Many things are tried out. Many ideas regarding, even when I was in January in Guangzhou, my students were very excited about the new collective data pools, data exchange context that now you have in China for allowing maximize the value of industrial data. So that's one interesting thing that why are not the Europeans looking to many of the policy designs in China to draw their own ideas and be inspired, because the Chinese did the same with many Western countries, and they did it with Singapore, and they learned with Taiwan, and they learned with South Korea and Japan and all that. So yeah, experimentalism seems to be quite important because you never know what is the policy that will be effective. Now, regarding the new energy vehicles, so the electrical vehicle industry just, it seems that it came from nowhere. The Japanese were doing hybrids. They thought that the transition will be slow. And in fact, they had some success with Toyota and Nissan, their ventures into that, because the Japanese are leaders or have been leaders with China, with South Korea in batteries, in battery technology, especially the conventional, what's the name, ion, I forget the technology now, the type of battery that we have here. They have been the most advanced in terms of innovation. But the Europeans didn't have this upstream industry. Yeah, they didn't. They did some research, but they didn't have the industry of coming about with the batteries themselves. And in fact, you're right. It's very bizarre that BMW was very successful with the tiny compact car, and that was something that they actually discontinued. And this was so much the case that even the Financial Times made a piece just when they did that decision. So it seems to be a sort of stop and go. You don't know, the lack of consistency. So remember VW they seem to have been much more focused in trying to innovate how to escape, emissions of diesel cars, this fake innovation, to fool the tests, more focused on that, trying to sell diesel cars, than in investing in new disruptive technology, because this new paradigm of electrical vehicles really changes the architecture of the car with much less components needed, with much more intensity of rare earth included in the input. It's a total shift in the way you source the components and how the components source the materials. So I don't know what is in their minds. According to Financial Times, one solution is just to double the trade barriers. If that sounds like a solution to you, Julian. So that's what I just checked from the Financial Times.
What does the governor and the officers of the European government, such as Germany, France, yes, and Britain, what's the attitude of the maybe some officers who in charge of the police making?
I mean, they are concerned definitely because the car making industry is a classic industrial sector in Europe, and with lots of spillovers to small and medium-sized companies, and they are definitely very concerned. So they are talking about some sort of defensive measures. So, like raising tariffs to stop Chinese cars from flooding the market, or they can also be heard to make noises regarding the antitrust authorities, competition policy decision makers, to allow for some more mergers and acquisitions between the giants, consolidation. So we need less but more powerful car makers to fight off the insurgents. The insurgents are the little giants that came from China and now are true manufacturing giants. So again, this is a defensive measure they are talking about. I'm sure I did not answer, but I did my best, Julian.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Zolin. You have an advantage over me. You've been taught by Professor Sandra. No,
I learned from
Professor
you.
Sandra. Professor Sandra. First, thank you very much for picking our brains. It's nice to be alive and try to follow. Try to follow. I followed in the beginning. I got a little bit lost on the scenarios, but I hope someday you'll explain that later.
Shame on me.
But anyway, one first very quick thing. This in the US economic rules is EU rule is fantastic. Can I just quote Professor Sandra?
You can,
But
because I think
it's,
I'm
someone
quoting.
else is it? I
I'm
know.
quoting myself because I think I wrote this line in a Macau business article. I think in February.
So it's there.
It's there, I think. Yes.
No, very well. Just something. I'm not going into big tech or your presentation directly, but I'm trying to use your presence here, knowing how much you know about China and Macau and big tech and all these students of yours, of whom I've privileged to have met a few.
All brilliant.
Already, okay. I'm just going to sort of try to pick your brain now to come down to this small place, Macau, which is basically a dot in the middle of China, and even a smaller dot in the middle of the world. Okay, and sometimes here, when we are here, we think, well, this is a gambling city. It's very nice because it makes a lot of money, but besides that, it's very difficult to do anything from Macau, based in Macau. I don't think that is the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, me and Rui Pedro, we were small, very small partners of a project based here in Macau, which started with very long time ago. We were kids, yes, 50 years ago, and it started with technology from Israel, army technology, which had been just put on the civil market, and and it did actually work in the beginning very well. In fact, I was the lucky one that went to Geneva in Switzerland to sign a protocol with the vice president of Google. That was the best part of our venture, I believe. He missed it. But the thing is, it is possible to do things in Macau.
Mm-hmm.
I know it is difficult, but it is possible.
Mhm.
And I was just trying to find out if we could enlighten us of how to follow this wave of big tech or AI,
Yes.
whatever, from this small dot
Yes.
in the world.
Thank you for this excellent question, because this is really a question I had in mind that somebody should put. Is Angus Cheong here? Angus? So Angus Cheong, born in Macau, high-tech entrepreneur, a new AI specialist, is a serial entrepreneur. He has companies also in Hong Kong, not just in Macau. I met Angus and we became great friends. I'm so happy that you are here, Angus. I met Angus outside Macau, outside Portugal, where Angus is famous.
No.
But very humble, but he's famous outside. And he has this new product, Devo Miner, this is how we say it in English, that he can just explain, enlighten us. Not only his company is high-tech based in Macau, he has done things that are amazing. He has been the pioneer of internet measurement in Macau. We always used his analysis and stats in Portugal because we were privileged enough to be his friends, so we knew exactly when the new data would be coming. And he is an example of that. So, Angus, just before I ask you what you think about me bringing you to the limelight, just let me just give you another example. Tomorrow, another student of mine is coming, Dora. She's in Wijin. What's the Ilha da Montanha? How do you say? Angen. And she's into biomaterials. She has a long cycle in her company's, planning about, getting more into these biomaterials that China needs so much and needs to import. Now they are trying to develop their own materials here in China. But she's just launched late last year a new product on something that you can have as a consumer to get less tired in terms of brain power, since we know that with COVID and with the use of remote work, this is very stressful on the brain. They have just made a byproduct of their own main research line to introduce this new product, and they rolled it in Macau for the first time. And Macau is having a role, which is a lead market for a new set of companies, new age companies, just in this deep cooperation zone, that can use, such a big rotation of consumers here. So they can test the taste of this medicine, they can taste the design of the package, they use the logo of the ruins of São Paulo in the packaging. So this is a great contribution and gives us a clear example of how Macau can actually add value to this lady, young engineer coming from Beijing that decided not to establish her company in Shenzhen, but looked towards Dubai, and she's a friend of Macau. How cool is that, right? But talking about cool, Angus, let us know, what are you working on these days?
I'm very honored to be mentioned by Sandro, a very good friend of mine, and actually, my story is just a very, very tiny one in terms of the big tech you talk about today. But I started as a professor at the University of Macau, and after 13 years of teaching. Then I became entrepreneur, and I started to do my startups. And at the very beginning, I just conduct surveys regarding the internet surveys, which has been carried on for 24 years in Macau. So we have 22 annual reports already, because of we missed two reports due to the COVID and the budget. But in terms of what you have just mentioned about the default miner, actually we cannot do any kind of innovation that you can sell in Macau, actually, as a small startup, and we try to make it out of Macau, and still we cannot make any kind of money at this moment. But we have been becoming a little bit popular in out of Macau. Like we have the users from the University of the Tsinghua University, Fudan University, and a lot of the famous university in the mainland China, and some in Hong Kong, and even we have professors from all around the world who use our. The default miner actually is a platform, a cloud-based platform for analyzing unstructured data. Yeah. And some of the companies also use it as for analyzing the social media content to get the insights out of the content. So actually, we now have more than, I think it's 30,000 users around the world, but still we cannot make any kind. We cannot make money out of it. We still are investing. And we are now doing some kind of AI innovation, which can be incorporated into the platform so that people can use it for example, automatically generate the coding scheme and use the AI to code the content, like the sentiment, like the categorizations, like the you can use a lot of statistics analysis, and then you can ask AI to translate all those statistics into articles and to analysis results. So this is what we are doing. Another thing is just what are these AI for? Based on if they're successfully transcribing or translating the statistics into plain words, or they can code everything. What are they for? What are they for? Yeah. What are the purposes? Oh, there's many different kinds of purposes that you use AI to do, but I cannot name that too many at it. For example, you analyze the data, for example, for the insight of your products, like all the policies. What is the main focus of the internet users regarding the policy that the government release, or what is the reaction of the customers towards the brand image, the campaign of any kind of promotional activities, this kind of stuff. And 2 days ago, we released the internal report, and after the release of the report, and we have the AI workshop. Actually, we're working on the Macau-based AI chatbot, something like you can use it as like a ChatGPT, because we incorporate those large language models like Gemini, CRED, ChatGPT into our platform, so that you can use them for any kind of conversations. That's from OpenAI. Yeah. Sorry. No. We don't have the Macau ChatGPT. We have the Macau AI based on the large language modeling, some like from ChatGPT, from Gemini, or from CRED. We can use our local data to fit those LLM and generate the results for our own use. So that's the basic idea. Because if you just use ChatGPT, they will generate a lot of what they call the hallucination, the wrong answers. But with the local data, you can improve the accuracy and the credentials of the output. That's our basic idea.
How many years of the data are taken?
How many years?
Since, for example, since 1940 or since 1960 or since 1980?
It very much depends on what topic you are talking about, because we have data from from the legislations, we have data from the policies, have data from the news media, and we also have the data from the Encyclopedia of Macau. So you can do quite a lot of things. And also we have the open data from like the car parkings, the weather, and the real-time data of the airport. So many kind of things that you can incorporate into this kind of platform using your local data and the international LLMs. That's what we do. So I talk too much.
No.
It is not my time today. This is not my time today. So sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much.
Maybe next time you have a release of a new report, maybe you can release it down here, downtown.
We just try.
Professor. Professor Sandro, thank you very much for the presentation. I would like to ask you a question regarding the four scenarios that you showed and that you published on the report. Which one do you think is most likely, and which one do you think would be more likable?
Likable. Yeah. So let's take whatever that is, European perspective, whatever that is. For instance, one thing that we found out, at least my colleagues, I could see that the way they interacted when we were working was, this fact, this data point, this news item today, this really fits, this is scenario one. And then there was another piece of news. And my colleague would say, this is scenario two. This makes complete sense. If I put my glasses and I'm in scenario two. Because we also, in our stress tests, we asked for site experts to come up with, we came up, but we wanted them to talk about weak signals that will push us towards one or another. So people typically will say that scenario two, Pax Technologica, one in which you still have big tech. They will not go down, but they will have to be managed somehow. Some people say this is the most probable. With a terminology that we don't use. Probabilistic approach is not used here. These are just possibilities. Everyone is very conditional. And we are not encompassing everything, just a few variables. But for instance, within our team, some of us, for them, scenario 3 was the most desirable. Scenario 3 is rematching your ability to still have a say in the world with the technological transition, but one in which the big tech will somehow lose their edge. They will become, big, too big, cumbersome, these economies of scale, these economies of scope, maybe a scandal, maybe more than one scandal, corruption, Tesla not selling cars, so actually it's not just the Chinese having a crisis, Tesla has a crisis too. Crisis can be very democratic, now it's your time. So that can happen, but in this way, Europe is able to, re-encounter itself. Yeah, so this will be, I mean, in our team, very popular with some of us. Scenario 3. I think now it's very late, yeah? And I think your question was, because you are Rui Pedro Cunha, maybe the best way to end the session. Yeah, but I'm not in charge. I seem to be in charge, but it's not true. So thank you so much again, Rui, for this. Thank you so much, Filipa, for immediately reacting so positively to this possibility of me being here. And yes, every time I'm in this corner of the world, please just exploit me, because to do something for you, you know, just to give back to this wonderful institution is really a pleasure and a great honor. Thank you so much.